In the news this week, cancel the ads. Should the media stop running Clive Palmer's advertisements as his attack on WA continues?
Also this week, concerns are raised over Australia's trade relations with China over a new beef ban.
Police Operation Timing Belt exposed alleged inappropriate contacts between youths and offenders.
And on Western Perspective, an interview with Perth mayoral candidate Sandy Angie.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Leung and Sarah Smith.
Good evening. As the fight between Clive Palmer and Mark McGowan continues, Mr Palmer's long-running advertising campaign against WA has political experts labelling it as a smear campaign. But does this also raise questions around media outlets and their advertising business models? Telehana explores this issue further and the phenomenon of cancel culture.
A WAMN News poll asking if the mainstream media should refuse to publish Clive Palmer's ads sparked a majority vote in favour of the ads being refused. Experts have labelled the advertisements as a smear campaign, which isn't working the way he anticipated. The positives are trending towards Mark McGowan and not in favour of Mr Palmer.
It's okay if he wants to run an argument about borders, but when he wants to run a smear campaign just because he's angry, the question will be, what are you trying to achieve through this, Clive? Why are you running this campaign? What's the purpose?
He believes despite the media's impacts on people's political orientations, Mr Palmer will not swing the public opinion in WA against McGowan or the hard border.
In a system like ours, he has a right to advertise. If he's got the money, he has the voice. So the person with the most money gets the loudest voice and they become the dominant voice in a democracy. It's not good. But our commercial media doesn't care. They're not interested in democracy. They're not interested in preserving democracy. They'll give whoever has the money whatever voice they can afford to buy.
The idea that a media company can not only make choices about its editorial but about its advertising, that we could shut down an entire perspective in a public debate by denying someone a platform, I find that quite disturbing.
Dr. Kate Davies, journalism lecturer at Curtin University, said concentration of media ownership is the underlying issue, and the business media model is under stress with internet giants eating up revenue, rather than going towards content producers to fund more production.
Now, if what you're saying is that all of our media is making the same decision, then the problem is that all of our media is run by too few businesses. Just because a few thousand people say, I'm going to boycott your product, you need to look, are they actually the audience? Or are they just 1,000 other people who are not actually part of your core audience, who don't have subscriptions, who aren't paying to keep your business rolling? They're just making some noise and having a go.
Dr. Davies believes online generations are putting an expectation on commercial media outlets to choose who they take their advertisements from, when there is currently not any expectation a publication endorses every product they accept advertisement from.
So I think the real difference between cancel culture and the old way of doing things is the old way of doing things was about let's hear every argument, let's evaluate their points and their premises based on fact and logic. And cancel culture is just like, I don't even want to hear from you. I don't want to see you, just go away. And I don't think that's a very logical or productive approach.
Taylor Hanna, WAMN News.
Rising tensions between Australia and China were highlighted again this week after another Australian beef producer was targeted with import bans. As the issue drags on, the PGA WA has expressed concerns about the ban, saying it signals increasing trouble for Australia's global trade relationships. Helene Fung reports.
Another Australian beef producer has been targeted with import bans by Chinese customs this week. Chinese officials say the banned drug, chloramphenicol, was found in beef from Queensland abattoir John D. Warwick, a statement that is at odds with a June 30 quality check of the company's produce. Pastoralists and Graziers Association President Tony Seabrook says he believes the ban is a sign of increasingly troubled trade relationship with China.
We thought we had a very respectful trading relationship with China, and there's a certain amount of disrespect sort of creeping into this.
Mr. Seabrook says if the bans continue, it won't just be people who work on cattle stations that are affected.
But there's the cash flow that comes into the country on the basis of that trade that then is dissipated amongst the broader community. So it's not just about station hands or companies that own pastoral land. This is a much bigger issue.
Meanwhile, Small Business Minister Popapalia has been spruiking going out bush as a way for people to look for work as JobKeeper winds down.
People should consider, if they want to get a job, it will be incredibly easy if they just get out of the city and look to the regions.
Helene Fong, WAMN News.
WA Police's Operation Timing Belt has identified 11 offenders they alleged engaged in inappropriate contact with youth on the internet. Amongst them, 4 are reportable offenders.
In a press conference this weekend, police detectives alleged that they discovered inappropriate online and physical contacts between a youth and a reportable offender since April this year. Further investigation has uncovered 11 offenders who allegedly had inappropriate contact with 140 young people. Police have charged 18 offenders with 214 offences, including drugs, trespass and cruelty to animals. Authorities say investigations are continuing.
These are mostly young girls. They're at a vulnerable age. They get into this position often through friendships that are formed that they think are legitimate in the first place, and then it's quite difficult at that age to come forward to your parents or your friends and say what's happened. So a lot of this is going undetected in the past. Our aim is to start working back through the images we find on people's phones, identifying the victim, and then we'll approach them and try and help them through whatever they need. It's not always a police intervention they need. Sometimes it's some help from communities or education, who are really big in this space, and Department of Health. So it's around the victim first. If they're up to it, then we'll identify the offender and we'll go that way.
WA's Maritime Union has vowed to put Fremantle Port front and centre during next year's state election campaign as a central topic to be voted on. MUAWA confirmed the move during a national union discussion this week, which will involve targeted media campaigns in a bid to save the port. Secretary Christy Kane says it's all to save jobs for workers, who he says are doing a better job than automation.
I make no apologies for where we sit in all this. We are going to run a campaign that's never been seen before. We are going to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at a campaign, and we'll expose politicians and other unions that don't support keeping union jobs, well organised, permanent jobs, and a history of a port that's been here 130, 140 years.
The WA State Government has responded to our story Use and Abuse, aired on the WAMN Current Affairs segment Western Perspective last week. Use and Abuse highlighted the underground epidemic of financial elder abuse and the government's long-term failure to make the legislative changes recommended by not one but 2 reports from 2015 and 2018. A spokesperson for the government said the amendments to the Guardianship and Administration Act are under development, but the COVID-19 crisis has taken up much of the parliamentary year. WA MLC Nick Garan has responded to this statement, saying the government has had 3 years to amend this legislation and they are using the COVID-19 crisis to shield themselves from accountability. To read these statements in full, you can go to our website at wamnnews.com.au.
The ladies in yellow were back in the CBD this week for Daffodil Day, raising money for cancer research. COVID-19 means that the usual street appeal couldn't go ahead, but one fundraiser wouldn't let that get her down. The Cancer Council is aiming to raise $2 million this year, and they're encouraging people to get online and donate.
It's really important. We're raising money for cancer research, and it's also really important for us to have that presence in the community and have a bit of fun, a bit of colour in the city. Really hoping that people will jump on and donate to our website, which is www.daffodilday.com.au. So yeah, that's where people can show their support this year because we don't have our street appeal.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced his resignation after reports of a health decline. Japan's longest-serving leader has apologised to the public in a media conference, saying he doesn't want his illness to affect his decision-making process. The 65-year-old is suffering from ulcerative colitis, an inflammatory bowel disease with the condition worsening during the last few months. He will remain Prime Minister until a new leader is chosen. US President Donald Trump has accepted the Republican nomination for president at this year's Republican National Convention. In his speech, he has threatened to impose tariffs on any US companies deciding to outsource their production to China. President Trump's nomination comes following more tough trade policies against China. Despite the coronavirus fears, he made his speech in front of thousands of RNC delegates.
The birthday for Quokka will run over the whole month of September on Rottnest Island from 1 week last year, with activities including sleepover parties, bonfire and twilight tours. Perth Mint will also join the birthday celebration, releasing its first ever limited edition bullion coin featuring the marsupial. The state government says last year's celebrations were such a success that it needs a bigger party this year.
Western Australia is the most open economy, not just in Australia, possibly in the world. Businesses are able to work here and have a market here because Western Australians have jobs, they have security and they have confidence to get out into the community and spend their money in our market.
And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on the website and social media pages.
See you next weekend and have a good night.
Wish you good health and take care.